Okay, so I come from a life sciences background, having worked in this space for over a decade now. Um, my primary interest was always in planting and creating beautiful spaces, right? So with that, um, we started entering into multiple spaces in agriculture. I have worked with agri consultancies, traveled all of India and abroad, worked with planters, farmers, corporates, multinationals on different types of agriculture and agricultural requirements, and then moved to even more aesthetic means of planting, where you go into landscape design, right? Um, Today, we're just going to briefly skim over regenerative agriculture. It's a very broad topic. There are a few videos I'd like to show, but I don't think we'll really have the time. Let me just quickly get into the introduction of what we do. We focus on a whole host of sustainable solutions for agriculture or even residential properties. We focus on agriculture, forestry, landscape design, water treatment using aquatic and marshland plants, waste management systems, and rainwater harvesting. This has been achieved over multiple projects across India. We have offices in Bangalore and in Hyderabad currently. Just going over these as just aesthetic images to give you an idea of what is possible on any kind of property. These are residential properties, but we've done the same in larger farmland areas so that people can habitate it quite effectively, right? One of the focus is always to try and appeal to the people who are going to live on the land. This can be farmers, this can be uh, just civilians or residential homeowners, builders, uh, people who are in the real estate market. Always focus on building productive spaces that also look good. So always appeal to the aesthetic sensibilities of people. Uh, Going into some of the clients we've worked with over the years, we've worked with a lot of different architects, we've worked with independent builders, universities, factories, government bodies. We're currently on a project with a couple of government bodies in Karnataka and in Delhi. Okay. What we do, we focus on overall design when it comes to landscape. And when it comes to farms, we do everything from contour mapping, rainwater studies, water infiltration study, afforestation, planting setup, building guilds. Some of our projects are spread over, but one of them is Vanantara, which is over 100 acres, which was once a barren piece of land, now hosts numerous wildlife that has naturally come back into it. This property was just bare soil when we started, and now it has over, I would say, 70,000 trees that have been planted, mix of different species. We have some amount of uh, uh, domestic livestock as well, not really for any productive purposes, but just as part of the ecosystem. We've seen a massive change over here, and the entire area has a better water table because of the trees that have been planted. This is another barren farm which was turned into an event venue. This is largely was ignored for many years, and then we came and used permaculture systems. Permaculture is a design principle which focuses on observation-based agriculture, right? So you see what plants work well together, what animals are in the ecosystem, how they affect each other, what is beneficial uh, to the vision of the project, right? And this has been in function for the last 4 years. This is the Government Museum on Museum Road. It's currently being renovated, and we've designed most of its landscape setups for now. This is another real estate project. This is just a marketing office for a real estate developer in Hoskote. Again, completely barren agricultural land, which was just treated as you know uh, tradable land, and we've planted quite a bit of it, and you cannot recognize it if you go there. These are renders, but the project is completed. It has multiple water bodies in it. It has over, I think, 200 different species of plants, creepers, ground covers all over. The project itself is 100 acres, but this is just their marketing office, right? So this is again the previous slide. This is just jumped over. The Taj properties. Okay, moving on. These are some of the other projects which are more into agriculture. This was a slightly sick mango orchard in Krishnagiri, where the focus was more on trying to increase the diversity of crops planted there, ensure they had better rainwater harvesting. This year, we've captured significant amounts of water because of all the swales and groundwater infiltration systems and catchments that we had placed. We've also increased the tree cover by about 40%. This drawing is a little dated. Also, in the same property, we've managed to build a natural water treatment system. This is for a pool. It's almost an Olympic-sized pool, which has 3 different filters. All these filtration systems rely heavily on aquatic and marshland plants to effectively remove all your nitrates and nitrites from the water, right? This is a project in Coorg, which is a home and a food forest and an event space. So this particular client doesn't have one particular source of income. He has 3 different ones off of his property. It's a small property, not more than 2.5 acres, but the density of planting, the thought that has been put into it will easily accommodate about 200 people on any given day with space for more. And this is just a photo of a water body we built some time back, but yes. Now, getting to what is regenerative agriculture, I had actually planned for this to be a lot more interactive. So I'll have to cut this whole presentation short. But the primary focus is to take over sick estates or sick land where it has either been over-farmed, over-fertilized, and heavily depleted, and you focus on trying to nourish the soil. And the methods of nourishing soil are vast and many, but the primary focus is always to cover the soil as much as possible. Thereby, you plant pioneer species of trees that can do well in the harshest of climates, below which you have different types of ground cover to ensure sunlight doesn't penetrate and reach the soil, protecting the microbes in the soil. The next phase of it is to go into heavy mulching, right? In an arid piece of land, the availability of mulch is quite scarce. So you have to rely on cultivating different types of crops that are quick growing during the right seasons, create enough of biomatter for you, organic matter for you to then resupply it all across. It's a time-consuming process, but has been done in multiple projects and is very effective. Another thing is water capture, done with swales, bunds, rain gutters, ponds, and irrigation tanks, right? But the most important method of rainwater infiltration into the soil is always through the root zones. So having diversity of trees, bushes, and grasses will help ensure that a lot of the water is pushed into the soil. Now, this happens in 2 ways. One is just because of the sponginess of the soil. When you have a high bioorganic material on it. The second is the fact that trees themselves secrete a certain amount of sap back into their root zones, through the root zones to feed microbes. The excess of it then kind of seeps into residual streams. These streams help form your water veins, which then feed into your aquifers and your water tables, right? So this is the second method and very important one. Third is biodiversity itself. Now, not just looking at monocultures where you have a single form of tree or a single crop throughout, you have to sporadically break it with few very, very divergent crops, preferably nitrogen fixation varieties. You can use trees like Dada, Gliricidia, Moringa oleifera, along with Arachis glabrata, which is again like a pinto peanut variety. You can use different grasses, Cisbanias. All of these will help infuse some amount of nitrogen back into the soil if you maintain them in the right way. Right? Doing all of this will actively promote your Microbiome. The microbiome is basically all the bacteria and fungi that is growing in your ecosystem. These are essential for disease prevention, essential for the breakdown of minerals and conversion of minerals into chelates, which are then absorbed by the trees, plants, bushes, everything around you, right? And the fourth factor, which is not really fifth factor, I would say, is to have livestock. Now, livestock, you go into this one, generally people look at livestock as just cattle, but you can't always have cattle in India on smaller parcels of land. I mean, on 1 acre, having 2 cows makes no sense. You'll never be able to feed them. Your ideal option is to have either chickens or duck or guinea fowl. They help fix in high quality nitrates back into the soil zone while also aerating the soil, right? Uh, these are just the 5 basic principles of regenerative agriculture. One is to constantly cover the soil, have something growing on it, as even if it's aesthetic or if it's just a ground cover, make sure sunlight doesn't constantly penetrate the soil. This also helps prevent sheet runoff during monsoons. Sheet runoff is when soil is delicately eroded from the top because of running water, right? Next thing is to not disturb soil. Disturbing soil is currently done across the country, most places actually, using cultivators and tractors. Uh, Much more labor intensive and sustainable method is to just chop and drop or roll your crops. Uh, Needs a specialized machinery or can be done by hand, not on scale, but yeah, if you are able to keep the soil intact, you help improve its quality, thereby increasing its productivity for generations to come, right? Again, crop rotation is something you could consider, but having a diversity is a better option. Having smaller parcels with multiple different types of crops repeated in cycle helps. Also, sequential planting is a very essential part of regenerative agricultural system. Yeah. Um, I could go on, but honestly, there is a lack of interaction, so I don't really feel there's a point in me going into more details. So let's just leave it at this point of time. Yeah. Madam, you had some questions, right?
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Siddharth. I'll take up some questions now.
Mm-hmm.
So first, a few basic questions only. What are the key principles of regenerative agriculture?
I think this slide answers it best for you,
Yes.
right? We've just gone over this. Regenerative agriculture is nothing but a practice where you are constantly growing something that is beneficial for the land more than yourself, right? You can have numerous different crops you produce, but the purpose is you're not taking out as much as you're putting back in. When I say putting back in, I'm specifically talking about adding more mulch into the soil. So whenever you harvest a crop, you put back all your prunings, all your excess agricultural waste. Make sure the soil is covered. This breaks down, feeds the microbes, feeds all the worms and bugs that are there in the soil, which helps increase the nutrient value within that. The second principle is to have constant movement of animals. Mostly, I would prefer having hens and ducks. They work as effectively, if not better, than larger livestock. Um, yeah, and the other two is primarily having a mixed planting system where you have a broader biodiversity. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And how does regenerative agriculture differ from conventional farming practices?
Vastly. Conventional farming practices always takes away from the land, right? Uh, when you plant any crop, say the most simplest crop you would plant is say rice or ragi in Karnataka. Um, you will have to treat the soil in a certain way. You'll have to level the field in a particular manner, and then you'll have to plant during a specific cycle with certain types of inputs. And every year, your inputs keep going in. When I say inputs, I'm speaking specifically of pharmaceutical, industrial fertilizers, right? DAP, MOP 19, all of those. Whereas in regenerative agriculture, you try and stay away from all chemical fertilizer agents. Instead, you produce various mixes on site using either animals or herbs or plants which are available to you. One of the more common practices which we use is Amritagavya or Panchagavya. I'm sure you're familiar with this. This is a practice of multiple different agents such as cow dung, cow urine, milk. I wouldn't say milk particularly, yes, jaggery. All of these are basically additives to help increase the growth of the microbiome, which is in this case cow dung. You would have various bacteria and fungi that would proliferate because of the sugars and the fats made available to them. Once you broadcast this, you're just spreading it all over the place. These microbes then break down the minerals, the organic matter, making them more bioavailable for the plants to take in, right? It's a slower process than conventional farming, but a much more sustained and generational system. When I say generational, once you start practicing this, you don't have to worry about a few generations of it, right? Whereas every year you have to keep increasing your input of pharmaceuticals or chemicals, chemical fertilizers incrementally, like 5% increase every year to get a better crop yield because your soil doesn't have enough nutrition in it to support the plants. So this is one primary difference. The secondary difference is that you also have a rich biosphere of insects that are either predators or pollinators, which are thriving in this ecosystem. Another principle is not to actually use any pesticides. If you are using pesticides or insect repellents, it's more organic based. You're either cultivating various fungi and bacteria to help inoculate the larvae and eggs that are laid, or you're relying more on ladybugs and other insects which work as predators to feed off of aphids, thrips, and mites. Yeah. Yeah. Also, the nutrition, I think, is the nutrients gained from this. The produce is considered to be higher in nutritional value. It's a little debatable, but this is a much more beneficial practice.
Okay. Okay. And can you explain the role of soil health in regenerative agriculture?
It's the same. I think any farmer, anyone in the agricultural space will constantly tell you that soil health is the most important thing, right? If you have soil that is inactive, which is either too sandy or too clay, and this has happened over years of over farming or not farming, when you're actually not protecting the soil, not even letting it go wild, the nutrients within it, which are soil, basically consists of various minerals, silica, which is essential for every form of life. Now, not every plant can take these minerals effectively into them, right? You need these minerals to be processed. What processes it? Bacteria and fungi in the soil break these down into enzymes, make them into chelates. These chelates are then absorbed by the roots or the root hairs mostly of plants. But the plants also give back. When they take something, they constantly put back some amount of sugars through their sap secretions into the soil. That works in two folds. One is it's called globule, and it holds the soil together like a glue. It binds it, right? The second thing that happens over there is it it actively nourishes it better and better. The feel of high organic content soil is very different from your typical conventional agricultural soil, which is generally compacted after harvest. And it just loses its life. I am unable to describe it to you in a better way. But yes, primarily the lack or absence of organic life in the soil is what the main difference is. Sorry, did I answer that correctly for you?
Yes. Yeah. And what are some common techniques used in regenerative agriculture?
Okay. One is planting native species, right? It can be, again, native is a very subjective word, but trees that are found within one area which are doing exceptionally well is something you'd want to constantly repeat. Not all trees are beneficial, but most of them, having any kind of tree is good for you, to be honest. Having said that, I wouldn't recommend people put banyan trees everywhere. Instead, your options are to put Gliricidia sapium, which is a nitrogen fixing tree. It is very well adapted to South India. Every time you prune it or deprune it, it liberates some amount of rhizobium, which contains nitrogen, right, in the root zones, which are then taken up by other trees around it. So having trees also helps you with creating a lot more shade and brings in more mulch. These two are very essential. Shade protects soil, mulch covers soil. Together, they become a massive breeding ground for insects. Insects bring in birds. Birds are effective predators for multiple problems that you might have, but they also help increase the nutrient cycle within that area. So you're looking at multiple layers. Just having a diversity of trees, close to native, more into nitrogen fixing, hardy as a pioneer layer, first planting is always a good thing. Subsequently, you can add different layers as your soil becomes better, as you have more shade, more wind breaks across your property. So the conditions become a lot more controlled for you to go into more intensive agriculture.
Okay. And what are the benefits of integrating cover crops into a regenerative farming system?
Oh, okay. Multiple cover crops can choose. You can choose to have nitrogen fixing cover crops, which is immediately a nitrogen fixer right there. Second is it prevents soil erosion from sheet runoff. Sheet runoff is when water falls because of rain or I don't know, flood situation, and you erode the top level of soil, right? When you have something rooted, it prevents soil from running. Also, it helps then infiltrate, push that water which it stops back into the soil. Okay, so that's already 3 benefits of having cover crops. Now, the fourth one is when you have cover crops and you know cover crops are doing bad, you also know that all your other crops are going to do very badly, right? It acts as a very important barometer for you. When you have a very low maintenance cover crop throughout your property, and then suddenly you see that this is starting to wilt or it's starting to scorch, could be stress from sun, could be stress from water, could be a virus or a bacteria that's affecting it. You can easily correlate that to what is going to happen to the rest of your produce over the next few months and immediately look at fixing it.
Okay. And how can environmental engineering support regenerative agriculture practices?
Okay, environmental engineering, as we call it, is more towards mixing different things together, right? I come from a background which is life sciences. I have done permaculture. I've done a certificate design in Australia on permaculture design. I've moved from there into forestry and then worked with multiple planters. Environmental designing is blending more infrastructural work, more the right way to describe it is it's a blend of landscape design along with cultivation, right? Landscape design tends to be very manicured and very aesthetic, where you're focusing just on a certain look. But when you're looking at an environment, you're looking at the birds that are coming in, you're looking at the insects that are coming in, you're looking at the people who live in that area, you're looking at animals that may come and go at different points of time. How will that interact? How will that affect your residents of that property? Could be a farm, could be a home. What would people react to if you had snakes around? How would you prevent snakes from coming into the property? How would you make it easy for people to identify snakes that are on their property if you can't keep them out? Okay, how do you ensure that birds come onto your property have constant water source? How do you ensure that water that is falling onto the property is constantly captured and kept, right? So then you're looking at studying contour systems, you're looking at rainwater harvesting. So when you marry multiple disciplines in along with architecture, you arrive at something which is very close to environmental design, which is deliberately planning out how a sequence of events are going to work out over a longer period of time, right? I plant a sapling today. It's a mango sapling. In 5 years' time, it's going to reach about, say, 12 feet high. In another 20 years, it could be, depending upon the variety, it could be up to 35 feet high, or I could make it, table it and center it and make it a bonsai and keep it within 5 to 10 feet high. What is the benefits of that to me, to the people around it? What effect will that have on the bird life around you? These things are considered.
Okay. And what role do microorganisms play in regenerative agriculture?
No, I think we went over this, madam. Primarily on
Yeah.
nutrition cycling, right? And how minerals are broken down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we covered that already.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yes, please.
you want to continue on that question?
No, I think
Yeah.
we've already gone over it a few times over.
Yeah.
It should be fine.
Okay. And can you provide examples of successful regenerative agriculture projects?
There are numerous. I have been a part of a few, but there are numerous projects across India that have come up. One is Vanantra, which is in Shuragiri. Another one is Dharma, which is in Krishnagiri. There's one more coming up in Delhi. There are quite a few projects coming up towards the outskirts of Bangalore, some towards Coorg. I can't really name them. We worked in coffee estates, which was primarily, I would say, like, you can say monoculture because coffee, but then they also have timber. But now some estates are going completely into a route where they have more than 30 different types of crops constantly growing, right? So they're not specializing in one variety, which gives them a better advantage during off season. Coorg has seen massive decline in rainfall or an increase in rainfall off season, which has caused either flowered fall or berry dropping and has hampered the earnings of many planters across. So their reliance on having coffee, pepper, and silver is what led to this problem. Now, certain farmers, certain planters have chosen to add in different crops that allows them to sell consistently throughout the year. They don't have to worry about losing 1 year's crop at all. They'll be like, I'll get 10% from, say, avocado, 20% from cultivation of, what is it? Uh, Lavang? Is it lavang? Clove, not clove, sorry. Yeah, some spice, then another 20 from pepper and 30% from coffee, and you have tubers and then flowers. So having a broad diversity within your estate helps. And then also from there, turning your estate into something that is entirely different from agriculture, where you're looking at agri-tourism, where you bring people onto your property, host them for a bed and breakfast. That itself is a substantial amount earned, right? So estates don't have to worry about lack of labor to run their farms to constantly break even. Now they have tourism as a support system that is coming, which allows them to be more creative, grow different things, and not worry about the end result.
Okay. And what are the challenges and limitations of adopting regenerative agriculture on a large scale?
Oh yeah, it's primarily education and mindset. We used to do this in India all throughout. Primarily, it was very prevalent before the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution kind of ruined conventional agriculture. Well, previous traditional agriculture is the right word, right? This is nothing new. Regenerative agriculture, these are all new terms. Permaculture, very new term. The actual term is just farming the way it was supposed to be, where you have different crops that the person can grow for himself, his village. When you go industrial, you grow on scale, hyper specializing, and then losing out on advantage everywhere else. Could you repeat your question, madam? I went off tangent.
Yeah, no problem. What are the challenges and limitations of adopting regenerative agriculture on a large scale?
Yeah, so again, I was very close to what I was going to get to. The biggest challenge is breaking it down to supply of different crops. One, because people are currently used to farming in seasons, 1 or 2 crops in a year. and that's it. With regenerative systems, you have to focus a lot on finding a market for multiple different crops in smaller quantities throughout the year. That is a bit of a hassle, right? Then the benefits of this is you will have better ecosystem. You'll be a happier farmer in your own neighborhood because your home and your entire farm will be much more lush, will have different things to provide. You'll have new things happening every day. Another drawback is you have a lot more investment in labor and less in cost. You have to put in more effort to make your farm that much more productive without putting in chemicals, without putting in additives or boosters or any of those. You will have to actually be present, put your heart into this, and constantly work, right? Work with the land to make it better. This is a time investment, which I don't think a lot of people are yet willing to make.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
Yes, please.
there's three more questions.
Sure.
How can farmers measure the effectiveness of their regenerative practices?
Okay, the regenerative, this is again one, if you are able to actively achieve a regenerative system where you've gone from a bad depleted land into a much more productive cycle where your soil is good, you have microbiome and you have a lot of insects in your farm, that is one method, right? When you see you have earthworms, you have many different types of beetles and insects thriving in your farm, that's one measure that the soil is getting healthier, there's enough food for them. The next is looking at the bird life and animal life. There are lots of birds, which means there's lots of insects for them to eat. There are lots of birds, there'll be lots of snakes or other predators that will keep coming in. There's ways to tackle all of this, but these are first indicators is the environment itself will tell you. The second parameter is by watching the health of your own crops. You will know the difference from untreated control system to something that is treated, right? And the treatment over here is organic farming, is regenerative methods of bringing the soil back to its original ancient way of sustaining itself. The plants will tell you this just by the look and feel. Your yield may not be as good as, say, conventional farming, where you're putting in additives to boost the size and color of your produce. It'll be comparative, but maybe 20% less. However, the quality might be significantly better, right? And currently, the global trend is to go towards more organic, more sustainable, and cleaner produced sources of food. Yeah, I think I got that.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Of course, you can always
And
do
what is the relationship? Yeah. Okay. What is the relationship between regenerative agriculture and water management?
Oh, nice one. It is all interlinked, right? When you're saying regenerative, you're literally saying you're trying to bring back something that has been done with or that has died over time. The process of regenerating a land enables you to have better ways of infiltrating water back into the soil. You cannot do that without having extensive drip irrigation or sprinkler irrigation carried out. If you want your soil to be, if you want your farm to be sustainable, you need to constantly address water harvesting and water management principles. The better your land develops, the better your systems for this water capture and water infiltration also improves. If your trees are growing well, it means that they have a sustained source of water. They are also infusing water back into the soil, right? So it's all interconnected.
Okay. And how can technology be leveraged to enhance regenerative agriculture practices?
Oh, there are many different ways to look at this. First one, I would actually look at the most important one is education. Having discussions like this, having various platforms that promote it, having people go out and actively talk about it is one of the most important ways. Then having drone mapping, satellite mapping will help you identify areas of land that have done better because of regenerative practices or areas that need intervention. right? You can also study, again, if you just take a basic soil sample analysis, you will be able to tell what minerals and nutrients the soil is deficient in. It will also tell you how much of organic matter is currently present. These just reports will help you understand what you need to do to improve your soil if you're speaking with someone who knows what they're doing. Yeah, I think there are many new technologies coming up. Primarily with this, there's ways of drone seeding. There's a way of cloud seeding different types of tree seeds, and during a cloud burst that comes out. It's a very broad space, but I think the most important focus should be on technology, which is education focused to the farmers.
Okay. Yeah. What policies and incentives are needed to promote regenerative agriculture?
Policies? Sorry, madam, are you talking about
Yeah.
policy? I
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
really know. I have never really looked at the political or policy-based interventions. I have always looked at it as a single case point, what I can do, what my team can do, and what my clients like, right? So policies is something I cannot talk about.
Okay, no problem. And this is the last question. How does regenerative agriculture contribute to biodiversity conservation?
Okay, I'll give you a simple example. There are at least, I think, 800 different varieties of bees in India alone, and globally about 20,000 variety of bees, right? We know of 3 varieties which we commonly come across. One is Apis cerana, the common cultivar bee, which is used to make honey. The second, your wild bees, Apis dorsata, which are rock bees. You'll find the hives on buildings, some trees every now and then, right? And third is mellifera. Mellifera you don't really see in south as much. This is mostly towards the north. But every single type of bee out of these 800 different species have a function, have a specific way of pollinating a flower or a tree or a bush. When you do not use pesticides and you're trying to be as sustainable and organic as possible, you don't harm bee life. Now, bee life is what I'm talking about, but then you're also looking at beetles, butterflies, various other pollinators in the ecosystem. All of these help increase productivity of plants in general. Now, imagine having this many different types of pollinators in one ecosystem with minimal predators, with almost no disease. Your input cost is less. Your returns is higher because you're having a higher quality yield, right? Just for one example, if you have more bees in one area, you'll also have multiple other types of insects and predators which will come in. So biodiversity automatically increases. If you have a variety of bees, they also pollinate various types of wildflowers, weeds, shrubs, and bushes that are not considered agriculture worthy, right? So the far-reaching consequences of all this is that everything around this area, wherever this regenerative agriculture system is practiced, will naturally do better because there is more things that are surviving, right? And each system ties into the other. I mean, I'm sure you know exactly what I mean, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. One second. Okay, Mr. Siddharth, sir, I am not finding any more questions from our team. So now we have come to end of question round. On behalf of agricultureinformation.com, we'd like to thank you for a detailed presentation answering all the questions in depth.
Sure thing.
And I also like to thank my editorial team for sharing the questions. The meeting will now be closed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.